My brother called me a peasant and uninvited me from his luxury Christmas party. What he didn't know was that I'd spent 4 years funding the life he was so proud of. Then I discovered my signature had been forged, my company had been used as collateral, and the assets he planned to sell were legally mine. But the biggest shock came when I found proof that the mother I had buried 3 years earlier was still alive. And suddenly, Christmas wasn't about being excluded anymore. It was about exposing everything my family had hidden from me. If you were in my position, would you confront them immediately or quietly gather the evidence first? Tell me in the comments, and subscribe if you want to hear how I uncovered the truth. The first time my brother called me a peasant, I was standing in front of a Christmas invitation with my name printed in gold. My name is Ariella Conti. I was 34, the owner of Conti Printworks in Brooklyn. My brother, Severin, was 4 years older and lived in a 12-room penthouse overlooking the Hudson. He collected watches, drove imported cars, and measured people by what they could add to his image. Quiet. For 4 years, I had quietly helped to maintain it. My name was printed beneath a list of investors, patrons, and family guests. Then I saw the handwritten note. Please don't make this difficult. It would be uncomfortable to have a peasant among them. Then I laughed. Because Severin had apparently forgotten who had been paying for his Christmas parties. 4 years earlier, he had come to me after one of his restaurant investments failed. He said he needed temporary help until a new business deal closed. I gave him $20,000. Eventually, he stopped explaining every expense. He simply called it the Conti Family Hospitality Fund. Every month, I transferred money because he was my brother. By December, the transfers had become routine. I opened my banking app and searched the account. $1,184,600. That was how much I had sent Severin over 4 years. I stared at the number until my office door opened. Ilian Voss, my operations manager, walked in carrying a gray folder. Ilian was 62, had managed factories before joining my company, and had a habit of noticing problems before everyone else did. You need to see this before you call your brother. I opened it. The first document was a corporate guarantee.
My name was on it.
So, was the name of my company. I never signed this. I know. He placed another document beside it. Then another. All of them showed Conti Printworks guaranteeing debts connected to Severin's private investments. How much? $4.8 million. I looked up. You're telling me my company owes $4.8 million?
No.
I'm telling you someone has made it look like your company agreed to guarantee $4.8 million. I leaned closer. The signatures looked like mine. Then I noticed the authorization code. I recognized it immediately. 4 years ago, I had given Severin access to a folder containing scanned copies of my business documents. He claimed his accountant needed them for family investments. I had trusted him. I had never imagined he would use those files to imitate my signature. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, delivery trucks moved along the street while employees carried holiday orders into the loading area. Everything looked normal. It wasn't. Get me every document with my signature, I said. Ilian nodded. Already started. And don't call Severin. Why? I turned around. Because I want to know how much he thinks I don't know. That afternoon, I drove from Brooklyn to Manhattan. I didn't go to confront Severin. I went to his building. The doorman, Marcel Drouet, recognized me immediately. Miss Conti, is Severin home? Marcel hesitated.
No.
Where is he? I'm not sure. I looked toward the private elevators. Has he been traveling? He's been busy. With whom? Marcel glanced toward the lobby before lowering his voice. A man named Dorian Vale has been visiting. I knew the name. Dorian was a private wealth broker who specialized in luxury property deals. How often? Almost every day this week. Severin had never mentioned him. I thanked Marcel and turned to leave. Then the elevator doors opened. A woman stepped out carrying 2 cardboard boxes. I recognized her. Melis Rook had been Severin's executive assistant for 3 years.
She stopped when she saw me.
Ariella? Melis. She looked toward the elevator, then back at me. You're here about the Christmas party. I suppose everyone knows about that. Her face tightened. Severin didn't want you to come. I noticed. She lowered her voice. You shouldn't be asking questions in the lobby.
Why?
Because he knows you're suspicious. Suspicious of what? Maylise looked frightened. Then she handed me a small brass key. Take this. I looked down. What is it? Storage Unit 914. Where? Piermont. What am I supposed to find there? She shook her head. I can't tell you. Maylise. She stepped closer. If Severin asks, I never gave you this. Before I could respond, the private elevator opened again. Maylise immediately walked away. I turned. Dorian Vale was standing inside the elevator. His expression changed. Only for a second.
But I saw it.
He knew exactly what it was. Miss Connie, he said. Mr. Vale. He stepped out. He walked past me, then stopped. Be careful what you open. I turned toward him. Is that a warning?
No.
He looked back at me. It's advice. Then he left. I stood there holding the key. For 4 years, I had believed Severin was borrowing money from me to survive. Now, a private wealth broker was warning me about a storage unit my brother had never mentioned. That evening, I spread every bank statement across my dining table. I matched transfers with Severin's messages. The pattern was obvious. Whenever he asked for money, something expensive appeared in his life days later. A new car, a renovation, a private event. But one transfer stood out. $240,000. The note attached to the transaction said, Family Hospitality Reserve. I opened the message Severin had sent that day. Need this urgently. It's for a business opportunity.
Trust me.
I checked the date. Then I searched property records through the company's files. The same week, Severin had purchased a luxury apartment. But the buyer's name wasn't Severin. It was a company I had never heard of. Conti Meridian Holdings. My hands went still. I searched the registration. The majority owner was listed as Ariella Conti. I read it twice. I had never created that company. I had never authorized anyone to create it. And yet my name was on its ownership records. At 10:47 that night, my phone rang.
Severin.
I answered. Why were you at my building?
His voice was calm.
Why is my name on a company I don't own? There was silence. Then he laughed softly. You really should stop looking into things you don't understand. My name is on it. Exactly. The way he said it made my stomach tighten. Severin, what did you do? I gave you a chance to stay out of this. A chance? Come to Christmas, keep quiet, smile for everyone, and let me handle the rest. I looked at the invitation on my table. You uninvited me. I changed my mind.
Why?
His voice became colder. Because on December 27th, Ariella, I'm selling something that legally belongs to you. The call ended. I stared at the phone. Then I looked at the brass key Maylise had given me. Storage Unit 914. Whatever was inside had scared Maylise.
Dorian knew about it.
And Severin had just admitted that my name was attached to something valuable enough for him to sell. At midnight, I put the key into my coat pocket. I had spent 4 years funding my brother's luxury life. Tomorrow, I was going to find out what he had actually bought with my money. The next morning, I drove to Piermont before sunrise. Ilian sat beside me with a folder on his lap, while the brass key from Maylise rested in my coat pocket. The storage facility stood behind an industrial park near the river. Unit 914 was at the far end. The key turned easily. The door rolled upward. I expected boxes. Instead, I found an archive. Filing cabinets lined the walls. 3 locked cases sat on a metal table. A printer, laptop, and several external drives were stacked beside them. Ilian stared. Your brother has been busy. Every folder had my name somewhere on it. I pulled one out. Ariella Conti. Family assets. Inside was a list of properties, vehicles, investment accounts, and memberships. I recognized several immediately. The penthouse. Severin's Aston Martin. The hotel investment he had called his biggest achievement. A private aviation membership. All were connected to Conti Meridian Holdings. All were legally owned by me. Ilian opened another folder. You should look at the incorporation documents.
I did.
Conti Meridian Holdings had been registered 3 years earlier. The ownership structure showed me as majority shareholder. So, he wasn't borrowing money to build his company.
No.
He was using my money to buy assets through a company I supposedly owned. Ilian nodded, and then presenting himself as the owner. There was a purchase agreement for the penthouse. The buyer was Conti Meridian Holdings. The funding source was a series of transfers from Conti Printworks. My company, my money, my name. But Severin had lived there. The pattern became clear. Whenever I transferred money to Severin, the money eventually moved into Conti Meridian. Then the company purchased something expensive. At the bottom of one folder, I found a document marked December 27th, final transfer. I opened it. It was a sale agreement. Conti Meridian Holdings was scheduled to sell the penthouse, hotel stake, vehicles, and several investment accounts to a company called Vale Crest Partners. The seller's signature was mine. It was a perfect copy. Ilian photographed every page. "Don't sign anything," he said. "I'm talking about the digital system."
He pointed toward the laptop.
"Someone may have access to your signature files." We photographed the devices, documents, and serial numbers before touching anything. Then I noticed a small envelope taped beneath the table. My name was written on it. Not Ariella Conti. Just Ariella. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. "If you're reading this, Severin knows you're looking." I recognized Melis's handwriting. Another sentence followed. "Do not trust Dorian Vale." I looked at Ilian. "That's interesting." "Very." Then we heard footsteps outside. Both of us froze. Someone stopped directly in front of the unit. The door began to rise. A man appeared in the opening. It wasn't Severin. It was Dorian Vale. He looked at me without surprise. "I was hoping you'd come alone. I was hoping you'd stay out of my business." He stepped inside. "You don't understand what you're holding." "I understand that my name is on all of it." "That's precisely the problem." Ilian moved between us. Dorian raised his hands. "Then why are you here?" "Because Severin has already told the buyer that you're unstable. They're not his assets." "I know." The answer came too quickly. I stared at him. "Then why are you helping him sell them?" Dorian looked at the documents. "I'm not." He pulled out his phone and showed me a message. It was from Severin. "Need Ariella removed before closing. Use the family dispute angle. Make sure she looks emotionally unstable." I read it twice. Dorian put the phone away. "I've been trying to stop the transaction. Because the buyer doesn't want to purchase stolen assets." Ilian looked at him. "Then why hasn't the buyer canceled?" "Because the buyer believes the ownership dispute can be resolved before closing." Dorian refused to identify the buyer. I stepped toward him. "Ariella." I stopped. "There is something else you need to know. Your brother didn't create Conti Meridian." I frowned. "What?" "He inherited the structure." "From whom?" Dorian looked at me. "Your father." My father's name hit me harder than I expected. He had died 8 years earlier. After his death, my mother divided the family business between me and Severin. I remembered signing documents, but I had never understood the legal structure. Severin had always told me he handled the complicated parts. "You're saying my father created this company?"
No.
"He created the trust that owns it." Ilian looked at me. "What trust?" Dorian said, "The Conti Family Trust." I had never heard of it. Dorian took a step closer. "Your father didn't leave Severin control of the assets." "Then who did he leave them to?" Dorian looked directly at me. "You." Ilian stared at me. I thought of the transfers, the forged signatures, the Christmas invitation, the penthouse, and the sale scheduled for December 27th. For 4 years, Severin had been telling me I was helping him build a future. What if he had actually been hiding an inheritance from me? Dorian nodded toward the cabinets. "There's one problem." "What?" "The trust documents are missing." "Missing?" "Someone removed the originals 6 months ago." "Who had access?" Dorian looked at me for several seconds. Then he said, "Your mother." "My mother." I felt my stomach tighten. "My mother died 3 years ago." "I know." "Then she couldn't have removed them 6 months ago." Dorian nodded. "That is exactly why I think you have been lied to about more than your brother." He reached into his coat and placed a photograph on the table. It showed my mother standing outside a bank. The date was 6 months ago. I looked at her face. It was unmistakably hers. For years, I had believed my mother had been buried in Italy. Now I was staring at proof that she had been alive.
My phone rang.
Severin. I answered. His voice was almost cheerful. Ariella, I heard you went to Piedmont. I looked at Dorian. How did you know? Because I own the security system. My grip tightened around the phone. Severin laughed. You really should have stayed home. What happened to Mom? Silence. For the first time, my brother didn't answer quickly. Then he said, Who told you that name? I looked at the photograph. And I knew I had finally found the one question Severin was terrified of answering. The question about my mother changed Severin's voice. I had watched him lie for years, but I had never heard fear in his voice. Who told you that name? He repeated. You did. I never said anything about Mom. Exactly. There was silence. Then Severin said, Leave Piedmont.
No.
Ariella, listen to me. I've been listening to you for 4 years. You have no idea what you're walking into. Then explain it. He hung up. I stared at the phone. Dorian was still standing across from me. Ilian had moved toward the storage unit door and was checking the corridor. What does he know about my mother? I asked. Dorian answered carefully. More than he told you. I picked up the photograph. My mother, Celestina Conti, stood outside a bank 6 months earlier, wearing a dark coat and carrying the handbag I remembered from childhood. But my mother had supposedly died 3 years ago. I had attended the funeral in Florence. Or, at least, I thought I had. I want proof, I said. Dorian nodded. You deserve it. He showed me a scanned bank document. Celestina Conti had opened a private account 6 months earlier. The account had received 2 transfers, $600,000 and $900,000, both from Conti Meridian Holdings. My hands went cold. Why would my dead mother receive money from a company I supposedly own? Dorian looked at Ilian. That's the question. We photographed the documents before leaving. On the drive back to Brooklyn, I called the funeral home in Florence. The director remembered me. Mrs. Conti?
Yes.
I need information about my mother's funeral. There was a pause. The identity documents used to confirm the body. He asked for details, then returned to the phone. There is something unusual. What? The death certificate was issued in Milan. My mother died in Florence. That is not what our file says. I sat upright. What does your file say? It says the deceased was transferred to us from Milan. I looked at Ilian. Who arranged the transfer? The person who signed the authorization was Severin Conti. I closed my eyes. He had possibly lied about her death. The next morning, I flew to Milan. The medical archive listed on the death certificate stood in a gray government building near the center of the city. The clerk searched the records. Then she frowned. There's a problem. What kind? The medical report does not contain a fingerprint record. Was that normal? Not for an international transfer. Then whose body was transferred? She looked at the file. We don't know. The words stayed with me. That evening, we reviewed everything in the hotel lobby. You should sleep, Ilian said. I'll sleep when this makes sense. He opened the storage photographs. Look here. He enlarged one image. A document had been partially covered by another folder. At the top was a name. Juliana Very. Who is that? I don't know. I searched the name. Nothing useful appeared. I remembered my mother once mentioning a woman named Juliana. She had been my father's legal advisor. I called the number listed on an old family document. A woman answered. Hello. Is this Juliana Very? Yes. My name is Ariella Conti. The silence was immediate. I know who you are. Then you know why I'm calling. I wondered when you would find out. Find out what? Your father never trusted Severin. I looked at Ilian. Why? Because Severin wanted control of the family assets before he was old enough to understand what they were. What did my father do? He created a trust. I know about the trust. No, she said. You know the name. You don't know the condition. What condition? Juliana lowered her voice. Your father made you the controlling beneficiary. I stopped breathing for a moment. What about Severin? He received a fixed allowance. That can't be right. It is. Why would my father do that? Because he believed you would protect the business. I looked down at the documents. Everything connected. Severin had needed my money because he couldn't legally control the family assets. He had created Connie Meridian as a vehicle. He had used my identity to move money and built a luxury life around assets I was supposed to control. But there was still one question. Where is my mother? Juliana was silent.
Please.
She came to me 3 years ago. My throat tightened. After the funeral? There was no funeral. I stared at the floor. What happened? She told me Severin had discovered the trust. Why did she disappear? Because she was afraid he would hurt you. Ilian whispered, Ariella. I raised a hand. Where is she now? I can't tell you over the phone.
Why?
Because Severin isn't the only person watching you. The call ended. I sat motionless. Then Ilian received an alert on his laptop. The sale has been moved. To when? Tomorrow morning. I stood. Who moved it? He turned the screen toward me. Vale Crest Partners. The buyer was accelerating the transaction. I called Dorian. I know, he said. Why? Severin told the buyer you're preparing to flee with the assets. That's absurd. They believe you may be under investigation. Can they legally close? Not if we stop them. Then stop them. I'm trying. I ended the call. Another message appeared. Unknown number. It contained a single photograph. My mother. She was sitting at a cafe.
Alive.
Under it were 5 words. Stop digging, Ariella, or you will lose her again. I watched the screen. For the first time, I understood the real danger. Severin wasn't trying to protect a luxury lifestyle anymore. He was trying to keep me from finding the person who knew where every lie had started. And somewhere in Milan, my mother was alive. I spent the next 30 minutes staring at the photograph of my mother. She was sitting at a cafe in Milan, holding a cup of coffee, looking older than I remembered but unmistakably alive. I had buried her in my mind 3 years earlier. Now someone was threatening to make me lose her again. I called the unknown number. It rang once, then disconnected. I tried again. Nothing. Ilian watched me from across the hotel table. We need to assume your phone is compromised. I looked at him. By Severin? Possibly. Or by someone working with him. Then how did they get that photograph? I don't know. That answer frightened me more than anything else. At 6:20 that evening, Dorian arrived at the hotel. He did not come through the main entrance. He used the underground garage and called me from his car. Bring Ilian, he said. Leave your phone in the room. We went downstairs. Dorian was waiting beside a black sedan. He looked exhausted. The buyer is preparing to close tomorrow morning, he said. I know. You don't know everything. Then tell me. He opened the rear door. Inside was a thick legal file. The transaction isn't just about the penthouse. I sat down. What else? Severin is selling the entire controlling structure of Connie Meridian. Ilian frowned. To whom? Vale Crest Partners. Why would they buy a company whose ownership is disputed? Because Severin gave them something. He handed me a document. I read it. My name was listed as the beneficial owner. But beneath it was a statement declaring that I had voluntarily transferred control to Severin. I looked up. That signature isn't mine. We know. Then why would they accept it? Because Severin provided a second document. Dorian handed me another page. This one contained a medical evaluation. It claimed I had suffered severe emotional instability after my mother's death and had authorized Severin to manage my financial affairs. I stared at the report. This doctor never treated me. Dorian nodded. He doesn't exist. Ilian took the document. Then why is there a medical license number? Because someone used the identity of a real doctor. My hands tightened around the paper. So, he has been building a case that I'm incompetent. For months.
Why?
Dorian looked at me. To make it easier to explain why your brother controlled your assets. I suddenly understood the Christmas invitation. It wasn't merely an insult. It was part of the story Severin had been constructing. If I appeared unstable, isolated, financially irresponsible, and socially excluded, people would believe he was the responsible sibling. The word peasant had been deliberate. It made me look insignificant. It made him look superior. And the public humiliation would give his story another layer. I closed the file. Where is my mother? Dorian hesitated. You're not going to like the answer. Try me. She contacted me 2 years ago.
I stared at him.
You knew she was alive? Yes. And you never told me? She ordered me not to.
Why?
Because she believed Severin was monitoring you. I stood. You let me mourn her for 3 years. I was protecting her. You were protecting a secret. Dorian didn't argue. Instead, he pulled a small envelope from his coat. She gave me this. My name was written across the front. The handwriting was my mother's. I opened it with shaking hands. A single page was inside. Ariella, if you are reading this, Severin knows I am alive. Do not trust anything he tells you about your father's estate. More importantly, do not trust anyone who says they are protecting you without telling you the whole truth. I love you.
Mom.
There was no address, no phone number, no explanation. I read it again. Then I noticed a line written on the back. Ask Juliana about the Blue Ledger. I looked at Dorian. What is the Blue Ledger? He shook his head. I've never heard of it. Ilian looked at the envelope. Maybe Juliana has. We called her. She answered immediately. Ariella? Mom left me a message. Silence. What did she say? I told her about the Blue Ledger. Juliana inhaled sharply. Where did you find that phrase? In a letter. Then she wants you to know the truth. Tell me where it is. I can't. Why not? Because Severin has been searching for it for 3 years. What is in it? Your father's original accounting records. I sat down. Accounting records? Not ordinary records. They show where the family money went before your father died. Ilian leaned forward. Could they prove the assets belonged to Ariella? Yes. Then where is it? Juliana was quiet. Your mother hid it. Where? I don't know. That answer made no sense. You helped her. Yes. Then you must know. I knew the first location. Was it moved? Yes. By whom? Your mother. Where did she take it? Juliana hesitated. Your father's old print shop. I froze. The original Condi Printworks building had been sold after my father's death. I had not been there in years. We're going there, I said. Dorian immediately shook his head. No. I turned toward him. You don't get to tell me where I can go. The building is being watched. By Severin? Not only him.
I stared at him.
Who else? He didn't answer. Instead, he said, if the Blue Ledger exists, several people want it. The following morning, I returned to New York with Ilian. We drove directly to the old print shop. The building stood on a narrow street in Queens, squeezed between a warehouse and a tire business. The sign had been removed years earlier. I still remembered the smell inside.
Ink.
Paper. Machine oil. My father had spent 30 years there. The new owner allowed us inside after I showed him an old photograph proving my connection to the building. The place was mostly empty. Dust covered the concrete floor. I walked toward my father's old office. The desk was gone. The shelves were gone. But one thing remained. A wooden cabinet fixed to the wall. Ilian examined it. There's a false panel. We removed it. Behind the panel was a narrow compartment. Inside was a blue ledger. My hands shook as I lifted it. The cover was worn. My father's initials were stamped into it.
CC.
I opened the first page. Every entry listed transfers from the family business. Millions of dollars. Accounts. Property purchases. Trust distributions. Then I saw Severin's name. Beside it were payments marked unauthorized. I turned another page. Then another. The final entries were dated 3 months before my father's death. One line stopped me. Emergency transfer, Ariella Connie, $3,200,000. Ilian stared. What is that? I don't know. Beneath it was another note. Do not allow Severin access. I turned the page. A folded photograph fell out. It showed my father, my mother, Juliana, and another man. I recognized the fourth person. Dorian Vale. I looked at him. He had followed us into the building. You knew my father. Dorian didn't deny it. Yes.
How?
My father worked for him. I stared at the photograph. Why didn't you tell me? Because your father asked me not to. I stepped closer. You keep saying that. Dorian's expression hardened. Your father believed Severin would eventually try to take control. He knew. Yes. Then why didn't he warn me? He did. I frowned. Dorian pointed to the ledger. Look at the last page. I turned it. There was a handwritten message. Not from my father. From my mother. Ariella must never receive this until Severin believes he has won. I read the sentence again. My mother had planned for this. She knew Severin would eventually expose himself. But then I saw something underneath the message.
A date.
December 27th. Tomorrow. I looked at Ilian. The sale. He nodded. I looked back at Dorian. What happens tomorrow? He took a breath. Your brother doesn't just plan to sell the assets. Then what? He plans to disappear. My stomach tightened. Where? Switzerland first. Then somewhere without an extradition agreement. I closed the ledger. Then we don't have until tomorrow morning.
Dorian looked at me. No.
He pointed toward the entrance. You have until tonight. A black SUV had stopped outside the building. Two men stepped out. They were not police. And one of them was carrying a photograph of me. Ilian locked the office door. Dorian moved toward the back exit. I held the blue ledger against my chest. For 4 years, Severin had convinced me I was too insignificant to challenge him. Now people were willing to break into an abandoned building to take one old book away from me. Whatever my father had written inside that ledger was more dangerous than I had imagined. And as the men outside began forcing the front door open, I realized something even worse. Severin was not running from the truth. He was running from what the truth could do to him. Lock broke. Ilian grabbed the ledger and pushed it inside his coat. Back door, Dorian said. If they came for this, I'm not leaving it behind. Then we leave together. The front door crashed open. Footsteps entered the building. We moved through my father's old workshop. Dust rose from the floor as we passed abandoned machines. I knew a narrow service corridor from childhood. It led to a loading door behind the building. We reached it just as someone shouted from the office. They're in here. Ilian forced the door open. Cold air hit my face. We ran. A black SUV waited at the end of the alley. Dorian stopped. That isn't mine. The driver's door opened. Maylie stepped out. Get in. I stared at her. How did you find us? Dorian called me. He looked surprised. I didn't. Maylie glanced toward the building. Then someone else did. We got inside. She drove before anyone could ask another question. For several blocks, nobody spoke. Who were those men? I asked. People Severin hired, Maylie said. He knows what the ledger contains. I looked at Dorian. You said he was leaving tonight. He is. Then why hasn't he left? Because he needs one thing first. What? My cooperation. Dorian finally looked at me. Vale Crest won't close without proof that the ownership dispute is resolved. I understood. The ledger. Not exactly. He reached for the folder beside him. There is another document your father created. I opened it. It was a trust amendment. My father had signed it. I would become controlling beneficiary at 35, provided I had no financial misconduct conviction. I was 34. My birthday was 6 weeks away. I looked at Dorian. Severin has been trying to make me look incompetent because he needs to control the assets before my birthday. Yes. And the forged medical report? To establish that you couldn't exercise control. Ilian frowned. Then why rush the sale? Because once Ariella turns 35, the trust becomes nearly impossible for Severin to manipulate. I looked at the ledger. Everything had been timed. The money, fake medical report, Christmas humiliation, sale, and my birthday. Severin wasn't improvising. He had been preparing for years. Maylie's turned onto a quiet street. There is more. She stopped outside a small townhouse. This is where your mother has been staying. My heart stopped. You knew where she was? Yes. I opened the door before she finished speaking. The townhouse was quiet. A woman stood at the end of the hallway. Her hair was shorter, her face thinner, but it was my mother. I couldn't move. She covered her mouth. Ariella. For 3 years, I had imagined this moment. Instead, I said the only thing I could manage. You let me bury you. Tears filled her eyes. I know. I walked toward her. Why? She looked at Severin's name on the ledger. Because I was afraid he would kill you. The room went silent. My mother explained everything. After my father's death, Severin discovered the trust and demanded her help gaining control. She refused. He began showing her surveillance photographs of me, telling her that if she went to the police, I would become the next target. She disappeared, taking copies of my father's financial records. She contacted Juliana. Together, they hid the blue ledger. And the funeral? I asked. My mother looked down. Severin arranged it. Whose body was it? A woman who died without family. I felt ill. You let me believe she was you. I thought grief would keep you from asking questions. You were wrong. I know. I turned away. For years, I had blamed myself for not noticing. But one question remained. Why did you allow me to keep funding him? My mother closed her eyes. Because I thought keeping you close to Severin would make you safer. I stared at her. It made me his bank. I know.
No.
You don't. My voice cracked. I lost more than money. She nodded. I know. Then she reached for my hand. I am sorry. I wanted to forgive her, but I couldn't. Not yet. Ilian interrupted gently. We need to talk about tomorrow. My mother looked at him. The sale? Yes. She went pale. He cannot be allowed to close. We know. She walked to a cabinet and removed a small envelope. Your father prepared this for the day Severin tried to sell the assets. Inside was a notarized statement. It named me as the sole controlling beneficiary of the family trust. It also named Dorian as an independent trustee responsible for preventing unauthorized transfers. I stared at him. You've been the trustee? For 8 years. And you never told me. Your father instructed me to wait. Now, my mother said. I felt overwhelmed. Every person around me had known pieces of my life that I had never been allowed to see. Then Melis's phone rang. She answered. Her expression changed. What? She listened, then looked at me. Severin knows your mother is alive. The room went silent.
How?
I asked. Melis ended the call. He found the townhouse. My mother stood. We have to leave. But before anyone moved, another phone rang. Mine. The caller ID displayed Severin's name. I answered.
His voice was calm.
Did you enjoy seeing Mom? I looked at my mother. How did you find her? Because she was never as careful as she thought. What do you want? The ledger.
No.
Then tomorrow morning, I will release every document I have about you. What documents? Ariella, you still don't understand. He paused. I didn't create the story that you're unstable. My blood ran cold. Who did? I only used it.
Who?
He laughed quietly. Ask your mother why she was afraid of your father. The call ended. I looked at my mother. She had gone pale. Mom, she didn't answer. Dorian stood. What's wrong? My mother whispered 4 words. Your father was not innocent. Silence filled the room. I thought I'd found the truth. Instead, I had discovered another secret. And it was about the man whose death had started everything. My mother's words changed the room. Your father was not innocent. I looked at her and waited. What did he do? She sat down slowly. Your father discovered that Severin had been stealing from the company before he died. I frowned. That part is in the ledger.
No.
She shook her head. You only found the accounting records. You haven't found the reason he created the trust. Dorian stepped closer. Celestina. She looked at him. She needs to know. My mother nodded. Your father didn't create the trust because he distrusted Severin's ability to manage money. He created it because he believed Severin might become dangerous. I felt a chill. How dangerous? My mother looked at the floor. After your father discovered the theft, he confronted Severin. When? 3 months before his death. I remembered that period. My father had been angry all the time. He stopped speaking to Severin. Then one night he told me not to sign anything my brother gave me. I had assumed they were having a business disagreement. I had been wrong. What happened that night? I asked. My mother folded her hands. Severin threatened him. What did he threaten? To expose him. Expose him for what? She looked at Dorian. Dorian answered. Your father had moved money into accounts outside the family business. I stared at him. My father stole?
No.
Then what? He was protecting it. Dorian opened the blue ledger. He turned to a page near the end. Several transactions were marked with a code. A17. Ilian leaned over. What does that mean? Dorian said. Ariella. I looked at him. It means your father was transferring company assets into a protected trust in your name. I stared at the entries. The amounts were enormous. Millions had been moved over several years. He knew Severin would try to take everything, Dorian said. But why me? Because you were the only person in the family he believed cared about the company without wanting to control it. I looked at my mother. Did you know? Yes. Then why didn't you tell me? Because your father told me to wait. I closed the ledger. And you obeyed him even after he died? I thought I was protecting his final wishes. I walked to the window. Outside, people moved along the sidewalk as though the world were normal. Mine wasn't. My father had built a financial structure around me, without telling me. My mother had hidden alive for 3 years. Severin had stolen money from me while pretending I was helping him. And everyone seemed to have a reason for keeping me uninformed. I turned around. What exactly did Severin steal? Dorian answered. Enough to make your father confront him. Give me the number. Approximately $3 million. I laughed once. 3 million. I looked at the ledger. And I sent him more than 1 million. Yes. So, he was stealing from the family while borrowing from me. Yes. And then using my money to strengthen assets that legally belonged to me. Yes. I shook my head. He must have known eventually. I would find out. He planned to prevent that. Dorian pointed to the trust amendment. Your 35th birthday is the deadline. I looked at the date. 6 weeks. If he closes tomorrow, what happens? He moves the assets into Vale Crest and claims the transaction was legitimate. Can we stop it? Yes.
How?
Dorian looked at the ledger. With evidence. Ilian spoke. The forged signatures. We have them. The fake medical report. We have that too. The trust documents. We have those. He looked at me. But Severin can still claim Ariella authorized the transactions. I understood. We need proof that he knew I hadn't. Dorian nodded. And we need it before the sale. My mother suddenly stood. I know where to find it. Everyone turned toward her. Where? My husband's old office. I frowned. The one in Florence? She nodded. There was a safe behind the bookcase. Why didn't you tell me? Because I never knew whether Severin had found it. What is inside? Your father's correspondence. With Severin? With the bank. Dorian's expression changed. If those letters are there, they could prove the entire scheme. My mother looked at me. Then we need to go now. 2 hours later, we were on a flight to Florence. I sat beside my mother. For most of the flight, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, You don't have to forgive me. I know. I should have trusted you. Yes. She looked out the window. I was afraid. I was afraid too. She turned toward me. You never showed it. I didn't know I was supposed to. She reached for my hand. This time, I let her hold it. We arrived in Florence shortly after midnight. My father's old office was inside the family residence, which had remained mostly empty since his death. The house smelled of dust and old wood. My mother led us upstairs. She stopped in front of a bookcase. Behind the third shelf. Ilian moved the books. Nothing. He checked the wall. There's a panel. We opened it. A small safe appeared. My mother entered the combination. The door opened. Inside were envelopes, a USB drive, and a sealed letter. The letter had my name on it. I opened it. My father's handwriting filled the page. Ariella, if this reaches you, Severin has probably attempted to control the assets. Do not trust anyone who asks you to protect the family name at the expense of the truth. I stopped reading. My eyes blurred. Then, I continued. Your brother will tell you that I chose you because you are stronger. That is not the reason. I chose you because you ask questions when something feels wrong. You simply need to learn to ask them sooner. I laughed through the tears. Even dead, my father knew me. Then came the sentence that changed everything. Severin did not act alone. I read it again. Severin did not act alone. I looked at my mother. Who else? She shook her head. I don't know. I opened the USB drive. There were dozens of files. Bank records, emails, scanned contracts, and one audio file. Dorian played it. My father's voice came through the speakers. If Severin continues, I will report him. Then another voice answered. A man's voice. You won't. My father asked, why? The man said, because your daughter will suffer if you do. I froze. I knew that voice. I had heard it before.
Dorian looked at me.
You recognize him? I nodded. It was my uncle. My mother's face went pale.
No.
The recording continued. My uncle's voice said, give me control of the trust, and Severin will leave Ariella alone. My father refused. Then the recording ended. I looked at Dorian. My uncle was involved. Apparently, my phone vibrated. A message from Severin. Now you know why Dad died afraid. Another message arrived. Come to the Wintermere Club at 8 tomorrow morning. Bring the ledger.
Come alone.
Then a third. If you don't, I send the recording to the press and make sure Mom's disappearance becomes your crime. I stared at the screen. For 4 years, Severin had controlled me with guilt. Now he was trying fear. It would have worked once. It didn't anymore. I looked at my mother. I'm going. She immediately shook her head.
No.
Not alone. Dorian stepped forward. You won't be. Ilian closed the safe. And neither will the evidence. I looked at the clock. We had less than 7 hours. The next morning, Severin expected me to walk into the Wintermere Club as the frightened sister he had spent years creating. Instead, I planned to walk in with the trust documents, the blue ledger, my father's recording, proof of the forged signatures, and the woman he had spent 3 years pretending was dead. But there was one thing I still didn't know. Why had my uncle helped Severin? And why had my father recorded their conversation in the first place? At 2:13 a.m., another message appeared. This time, it wasn't from Severin. It was from my uncle. Ariella, do not go to Wintermere. Your brother isn't the person you need to fear. I stared at the message. Then another appeared. I am. I looked at my mother. She read the screen. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I closed the phone. We're going. Because after 4 years of being lied to, I was done running from secrets. If my family had built this entire disaster around me, then I was going to walk into the room where it began and make every one of them answer for it. The next morning would not be about Christmas. It would be about ownership, truth, and the family that had spent years deciding what I was allowed to know. And for the first time, I wasn't walking into that room as Severin's little sister. I was walking in as the person who legally owned everything he had spent 4 years pretending was his. If you enjoyed Ariella's story, subscribe for more family betrayal stories, hidden secrets, unexpected twists, and satisfying endings.